A man chooses, a slave obeys.
What follows is a series of graphic, interactive scenes that we can't show you.
Okay, so we're going to talk about a mobile game called Dragon City, and as I mentioned in the opening, this is not a particularly interesting game one way or the other. I mean, besides, it's not a huge money making game. It's not on the top 100 of anything. It's just a random game. So we're going to look at this one in terms of its ethical issues. And listeners out there, if you have a game you'd like us to look at for future episodes, please let us know.
And you can do that through contacting us at our website at ethicsofvideogames.com.
So in Dragon City, you're basically a zookeeper for a giant zoo of dragons built on top of a chain of islands floating in the sky. So it's a magical world. The dragons are very cute. They start off as eggs, and then they become little baby dragons, and they become sort of teen dragons. And there's a lot of them that are dressed up in different costumes. So it's a very cute little game. You gain eggs to raise into dragons. You build farms for growing their food. They're vegetarian, thankfully. And you build habitats for them based on the kinds of dragons you have, and there's like 12 different types. And there's thousands of dragons to acquire. So they just keep adding dragons, right? You can breed them together to get different variations, and in fact, one of the sort of collection mechanics in the game is to get as many different dragons as you can. There's also a combat system where you pit your favorite dragons against others and a variety of other ways to use your dragons to do different things, right? There are two soft currencies. There's food, which you use to grow the dragons and level them up, and gold, which is used to buy habitats and other buildings in the zoo. Farms and other, like farms for growing the food. The hard currency is gems. Gems are hard to come by, but you can purchase more with real money, of course. Everything you do gives you XP that determines your player level, which opens up new features in the game. So as you play, your own personal player level goes up, and more stuff opens up. So the first note is there's so many pop-up ads.
You know, Andy, before you get to that, let me just make it. First of all, I downloaded this game last night, only to find out that it was already. I had to re-download it. My son apparently had played it, and because he's on my iPad and my iPad's connected to the phone, apparently I used to have it on my phone. So first of all, I think we need to mention that this is a free-to-play game.
Yes.
Free-to-play.
Yes. This is a free-to-play game. I have not spent any money in this game, and presumably you haven't either.
No. I think this is also kind of a good opportunity to kind of, look at free-to-play games and kind of ask, what sort of things come with the territory of playing kind of, these mobile FTP games. Because most of the things that we're going to talk about, I think, are pretty common for free-to-play games today.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's my point, is that a lot of the things that we're going to talk about are extremely common. This is not an unusual game in any way.
I find free-to-play games really interesting from an ethical standpoint, in part because they're kind of like, there's no other analog I immediately can think of for
television, right?
Well, television is free.
Television is free. Right. You turn it on. If we're not talking about cable channels or any of the premium channels, we're just talking about basic television.
Right.
For all of our childhood, which is all we had.
The TV, of course, doesn't have interaction, and so much of this race on interactivity, right? Right. And
although there are some moments where television is interactive, right? There are ads. Call now to get this reward.
Well, to me, this is also another difference, right? Because TV is free, but they sell different companies, right? Buy slots, so you make your TV show, and the producers of the TV show are different than the producers of the of the ads. And though you might have ad placement in a TV show, right? It's
Sure, product placement is a good example, right?
Right. Product placement where you have at least some interaction between these two things. Free-to-play games marketing is at the center of free-to-play games in many ways. And it has to be, because how are they going to make any money, right? I mean, this is still a product for a business, but it's a product you get for free. And I just think that's just kind of important to, even though we're going to talk about this game in particular, I think it's important to kind of say that what we're talking about is, in some sense, a bigger issue about free-to-play games in general.
Right. And I should note here that maybe 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I remember having a lot of conversations with other game designers at GDC where they were sort of up in arms about this sort of new free-to-play kind of milieu that they were asked to. They were bothered that they were being asked to basically be marketing people.
Right.
As opposed to just game designers. They just wanted to make a fun game, and why did they have to start thinking about like who their market is and what their market would want to do with their games? And my answer to them then, and it kind of still is that your job has always been that. Whether or not your game is free to play, or whether you're making some sort of game that you spend $60 for and then play it forever, you still have to think about who your market is, what they want, whether they're willing to pay for it. These are all part and parcel to the game designer's job.
But there's still, I think, an obvious difference, right, in the degree that you need to devote to marketing, right?
Yes, I mean there's a difference in where that marketing happens and where people think that they're going to derive value, right? When you're buying a $60 game, I only need to convince you that it's valuable before you play it. And in a free-to-play game, I have to continue convincing you that it's valuable.
And you don't just need to convince me that the game is valuable, that it's worth playing, right? You need to convince me continually to buy this and buy this and buy this and buy this, right? Which could be a bunch of different things.
Although remember, these games also have advertising in them. So even if you never buy anything, my company is still making money from advertising.
Right. Though, again, potentially have advertising in them. And this is, again, part of what's so weird about free-to-play games, right? You could have an advertising model. You could just focus on microtransactions. Yeah. So, well, let's get into it, and then we'll talk. Because I want to talk more about those kind of differences. But let's go ahead and get into it.
Right. Okay. So the first feature that I want to sort of call out, and what we're going to do this episode is I'm going to call out a handful of features, and then we'll talk about each one as they come up. So the first one is there are so many pop-up ads. As soon as you open up the game each day, you have to step through like 8 to 10 pop-up ads. Most of these are spending gems for something that you might want in game. But not all of them. Some of them are, they have a big green buy now at the bottom with a small obscure X for declining, which is its own sort of UI issue, right?
Sure.
Big yes, tiny little obscure no. Some are free opportunities to try something, which will then just lead you to another page or a subscreen where you can wager resources against some rewards. So
when I did this last night, I had a kind of different experience. First of all, literally 8 to 10 pop-ups doesn't seem typical to me at all. That seems like a lot. But it really kind of made me think, first of all, is there anything wrong with like an unlimited number of pop-ups, right? So, we never really think about the number of pop-ups. Obviously, from a practical standpoint or good design, right? Your players are only going to stand for so many pop-ups before they're like, screw this, I'm going to play something else, I'm bored, right? Or, I just want to play my game. So that's from a practical standpoint. And then, of course, different people might be willing to, stand for a different number of pop-ups, right? My in-laws, 2 pop-ups and they're done. They're confused. They don't understand what's going on. They can't really take this anymore. The number of pop-ups itself are are really, I think, kind of interesting. Obviously, a lot of pop-ups is annoying, right? For most people.
Right, but probably not ethically problematic.
Right. So there's the question, right? I mean,
Right.
you know that, let's say you know that if you do a lot, you know it's annoying people. But, I mean, this is a free-to-play game, and they know they're there voluntarily, right? They can leave at any time, right? You're not forcing them in there. Is this how we should think about the about free to play games? That when it comes to, let's say, things like the number of pop ups and maybe also like the things that are in the pop ups, do we just agree with the caveat that we could pull out at any time to whatever the experience is going to bring our way?
To a certain degree, a free to play game is like walking into a store. You walk into Target.
Okay.
Right. There's lots of things to buy. They want you to buy things. They're enticing you in with gameplay, but ultimately they want you to buy things.
Right.
And so in Target, they're enticing you in with stuff to buy, and that's pretty much it. And that's why you're there. But this is not why you're there to play a game.
Right.
So they have to sort of throw it up in your face. Buy this now. Buy this now. Buy this now.
Right. So is this, it's interesting, right? Normally when you get a product, and this isn't exactly a product, it's a service, right? But you kind of, right, you kind of know what you're getting, right?
Mm-hmm.
In free to play, and if the seller is giving you something else than you're getting, right, they're essentially defrauding you or something of the sort. Here, it's not clear, since you're not paying, is there an agreement of any kind other than you're here on your own will, and if not, go. And I say this because, okay, this applies maybe to the pop-up issue. If you went to a website and you need information from that website, and the website knew that, hey, look, we're a free website and we give very useful information, but hey, we got to make a living, so we're going to throw all these pop-ups at you.
Right.
Maybe this is the kind of analogy we're talking about. And is there a point where you might think that, the number of pop-ups is so annoying that it's essentially become unethical?
Right. Or, is annoying somebody an unethical thing?
Well, it's interesting, right? The context matters, right?
Right.
If you're unintentionally annoying somebody, then the fact that you're annoying them is not your fault necessarily. Maybe you could be negligent in your annoying or annoyingly reckless. But I do want to think about, I was thinking about how we were talking to Jose Zagal a couple of episodes ago about ethics and game design and, what he teaches the students. And this idea of it wanting to be proud of your profession as a game designer. And it seems to be harder to be proud of your profession if what you're doing is annoying people, right? Even if that's not, even if you're not doing that part, if you know that you're creating a part that's annoying people.
Right. Our job should be to bring people joy.
Right.
As a game designer, I want to bring people joy. I want to bring them entertainment. I want to bring them, I want to thrill and excite them and surprise them sometimes. I ultimately want to bring them, I don't want to annoy them. That's not, I might want to challenge them or even, make them feel certain ways to further the story, to further the larger enjoyment of the game. I want them to feel frustrated at some points.
Right. But, here you got a situation where the financials essentially dictate what's going to happen, right?
Right. But as you pointed out, like most games do not throw 8 to 10 pop-up ads at the viewer. So I'm not sure that they need to do this.
Right. So then the question is, right, how much do you need to do? And again, notice, and even if you don't need to do it, maybe you're just trying to squeeze more money out of your players. And maybe it's your right to do that, right? And maybe there's nothing wrong with that.
It's certainly against my philosophy of game design, which says, put the player's interests first. And I think it's important to point out that there's a lot of game companies that follow my philosophy in the same way that I do. They would never do this. They would never just try to wring the players for like the last little bit of money that they can. The other thing I want to bring up, and we talked about context. Both you and I have come to this game through children.
Right.
In my case, it was a friend of mine's 9-year-old who was playing it and wanted me to play it along with him. And in your case, your son had downloaded it at some point in the past,
right.
Played it for some amount of time and given up on it.
And what's interesting about it is, I downloaded the game, and the only pop-up I got when I opened it asked me essentially to turn on tracking on my iPhone. Which I have to say was really, really, really questionable. Why would I need to turn on tracking? What does this game have to do with tracking?
This game doesn't have anything to do with tracking.
Right.
But it really wants to sell you the right ads.
Right. And notice, right, to me, right, this was the first kind of questionable pop-up, right?
Mm-hmm. And it showed up immediately.
Immediately. So this is before I even got the training.
Right.
Which was, I don't think I've ever had, look, if I was playing like Pokemon Go or something, all right, I get it. You want to, you need to know where I am, right? I mean, that makes total sense.
Right, of course. The game design requires it. This one, the game design does not require that at all.
Right. You're asking me for personal information, and I want to, now, once I went through the training, the game asked me how old I was. And which was interesting because very few games ever ask me how old I am. And I thought it was very interesting that they did that. But they did that, again, after asking me if they could track me. And, that's not cool.
Right. Yeah, because you might be a kid and they wouldn't know that you're a kid until after they're already tracking you. Do you think that they actually stop tracking you if you say that you're a kid?
Well, so
probably not.
So that's part of the question, right? So I happen to say I said I was 9. I was just inspired because you said you got it from a 9-year-old. So I want to know what it was like to do 9. I'm curious to know how do you think did you play it as a 9-year-old, or did you give your actual age?
I probably gave my actual age or something.
Great.
I don't usually give them my exact birth date if they're asking for birth dates.
Sure.
But I will give them, I'm in this bracket. I'm 50 something.
Okay. So right. So notice, right. The question then comes: how is our experience different? And is part of the reason why I got less pop-ups than you the fact that I'm 9-year-old in the game? Did that
possibly,
did that influence? And if so, right on.
Or was it just because it was your first time into the game?
Maybe. Well, I came back a couple of other times just to kind of check that out because I was thinking that.
But it only does that. All those ads only come up once per day.
Okay, once per day.
Like if I go back into it the same day, I don't get all those ads again.
Right, because it has the daily rewards and stuff like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Though, and the tracking thing just came up once, just the very, very first time.
Right. I'm sure that's one and done, and you probably have a hard time turning it off if you wanted to.
Right. Okay. So after I did that, I'm a 9-year-old, right? I need to agree. So it has your page with the age, and it has the terms and conditions and the user agreement and all that stuff there that you then agree to. I just want to say I was 9, and I agreed to all the stuff. But it's not like anyone reads it if they're, 50,
Right, exactly. Nobody reads that stuff.
And very few people would understand that stuff if they read it, right?
Right.
Because that's mostly, legalese stuff. But again, that is kind of interesting, right? If I was 9, should it affect my, should there still be a pretense of me agreeing to anything, right?
Right.
So
you can't legally agree to anything. So
right. Then there was essentially a phone pop up that asked me if I wanted the game to send me notification. Does that matter if I'm 9 or not in terms of the pop ups that you can get? What do you think about that?
Yeah. Again, children can't legally agree to anything. So,
But I need.
yeah,
What
I mean,
if
I think
want notifications for my game? So, part of the question is, what kind of notifications do you think the game will be sending me?
right. Well, it'll probably be sending you reminders to come and play.
That seems to be like the big one, right?
That's going to be the big one. It's going to be, hey, you haven't played in a while, or hey, this thing because this game has a lot of what we call calendar-based gameplay, or like you do something and then 4 hours later, 6 hours later, 12 hours later, whatever, it comes due and you can come and collect.
Right. So your egg has hatched, and now you have your dragon, and your dragon's ready, and
Right.
now you're
And
getting
so
an
these are
alert
just-
letting you know, hey, come back and your dragon's ready.
Yeah. And these provide pretty good excuses for them to send you a message saying, hey, come on back and play some more.
Do you think there's any value to the player from this, or is this all just value for the company?
I know people who love that kind of gameplay. Farmville, that kind of gameplay started with Farmville, and there's a lot of people who really, really love it, who get excited when their farms produce something, and they've been waiting for it for in the case of Dragon City, you could be waiting for 3 days. I mean, some of these are quite long,
Right.
so it might be quite exciting for you to finally get this alert that
Right.
says, hey, your dragon hatched or whatever. So, there's some people who do enjoy that.
Right. Though it's interesting, all right, I'm thinking of, my son is not 9, he's 7. He would say aloud, though he doesn't really understand what really that means. And then we just get pop-ups all the time. Do the pop-ups
Right.
do any damage? Well, yeah, I mean, they take our attention, but,
Yep.
it's nothing much more than that. I mean, they're distracting. But it's not again, right? I'm thinking of this whole idea of like the 9-year-old pop-up. That to me, or the age
Right.
pop-up. That to me, I thought was a really kind of interesting thing. Like, I don't know if I would have put that there for a 9-year-old, but I definitely would have put it there for an adult. But would I draw an age here, like under 13, and you don't get to be allowed to have notifications? Or would I instead have put the notification pop-up in the settings? So if you want notifications, it's really kind of an opt-in instead of, in that kind of a capacity, where you need a player that knows to go to the settings. And speaking of the settings relating to this age pop-up, the settings essentially had it so, my do not sell my personal information was not pressed and couldn't be was highlighted and couldn't be unpressed. I'm assuming that was because I was 9. Right? So right.
That's good.
Yeah,
But
I
that
thought
was probably legal.
Yes. So yeah, that's a
Right.
part of it, right? Is it? I think COPA. I think is the right. Right, that handles that, right? You're not allowed to get private information for kids under 13, I think. So that was legal, but okay, good, right? They didn't have that. And there was one more thing. There was a setting for gem spend confirmation, which meant that if you're going to spend more, if you're going to buy or spend more than 20 gems, and
Yeah, I think it's 10, right?
well, they
Maybe
said
20.
They said 20. Right?
Is it 20? Okay.
yeah,
I couldn't
they-
remember. I remember seeing that.
That you need to double confirm it.
That's right.
And that
And that's pretty interesting too, right?
right. Do you have any idea, because you know the math of this game, right? What is a gem? What is that to me in money?
Yeah, the gem is the hard currency. They're pretty rare, so they're the ones that you want to conserve as best you can. The things that and the various values of the gem, the gem values change, or I should say, there's a lot of things you can do. You can use them to reduce the timers on things. So if you've got something that's going to happen in 3 hours, you can spend some gems, and the amount of gems that you spend is dependent on how much time is left on that timer.
Right.
It's not super clear what the math is. I haven't gone and like calculated exactly what that means in terms of gems to minutes.
Does the game give you any way to I mean, mind you, okay, the majority
No.
of players would have no idea how to do this, and the game doesn't give you a way to kind of calculate it.
Right. No. You would have to just like plot it out in a spreadsheet and then run some and then analyze that data.
Though I'm assuming
to figure out.
I'm assuming someone has done this. If I really wanted to find out, I could probably find it out online somewhere.
Probably, and then they would tell you that it's probably on a curve.
Okay.
So, right. So so that if you wanted to make something that was 1 minute long go to 0,
Right.
it would probably cost you a gem, but probably wouldn't cost you 60 gems to make something go from an hour to 0.
Right.
It would probably cost you 10 or and then so on down the line. So it's probably on a curve.
What?
So where you actually get more time with more gems.
Why is that? I'm asking because obviously there's a reason for that, and I like making these kinds of reasons explicit.
Right. Well, the big reason why they can do it and not have it be abused is because you don't have control over like the price of anything. That is to say, they want you to spend the most gems. They can make the most gems come up when you have something that's a long period of time. So you can't just spend like one gem to make it drop a little bit. You have to spend, it's all or nothing every time they ask. So it doesn't really matter if the gems have a constant value, just so long as there isn't a way for the player to like get more value out of them than the game company is willing to give.
Okay. So just to be clear, there is no specific temporal value for a gem, right?
I don't believe there is. I don't believe there is.
I'm just wondering, do you think, is there anything wrong with that? I'm not asking this as a rhetorical question, right? I'm asking this as a real question. Does there need to be? Because this is the sort of thing where, most of us hate waiting. Many people will spend money on buying gems, but you're spending money on something that doesn't have a kind of constant value.
Right.
It has a dynamic value that is never spelled out to you.
It has a dynamic value based on the current moment of your gameplay and your current, and it's honestly not that different from sale prices for things in stores. So this is not an uncommon thing to do, to say, you can buy one at this price, but if you buy two, you get one at half off.
Right. Or
so that means that your dollar doesn't have a consistent value.
Right. Or let's say I want to buy plane tickets, and if I buy it, 3 months in advance, right, it's going to be cheap. But the closer the date gets, the higher the price is going to be. So there's there's no consistency there.
So in that way, you can say, does my dollar have a consistent value? In those instances, it doesn't. It's contextual.
Right. Though, the value of a dollar versus my time is always the calculation that, I do for myself. Right. So
that's right. And it may be different from different moments of the day too. So it's all very contextual.
Okay, so to go back to the button, right?
Yeah.
Notice this idea of the button, right? So the button is essentially there to kind of stop me from accidentally spending too much money, right? Whatever 20 gems is, it seems like it's a significant amount of some kind.
Right, and I should point out that it's quite easy to spend 20 gems in increments of less than 20 gems. So they don't stop you. It's not like a daily amount of stop. It's just a single purchase moment where they say, if it's over 20, we're going to ask you, we're going to double check that you mean to do it. But if you're spending like 1 and 10 and then 5 and another 10 and then another 5 and another 12 and then 3, they'll let you do that all day.
Right, which is interesting because, again, I'm thinking of, it's funny, I was immediately thinking of my son looking for loopholes. Like let's say the confirmation means that it's going to go to my account and I need to, put my face, let's say it's activated by my facial recognition, like my phone, and I need to put my face in there to okay that. But if he just does it a bunch, gets the same reward by buying, 5 gems 4 times, he's going to figure that out really quick.
Sure. And the sort of sad thing about that is he won't get as good a value.
Right, because you're going to get a better deal if you buy a bigger quantity at once. But he doesn't care because it's not his money.
Right. But they are his gems.
Right. And he does, that's not entirely true. And my son is very excited by these deals, right? Mm-hmm. So another of the pop-ups, when I came back, right, the first pop-up I got was for the Dragon Starter Pack, right? The best deal in Dragon City. And it's like, it tells you normally it's $20, but you can get it now for only $2. Right, and includes gems, food, and gold. Right, so it's this big kind of starter pack. It might be a great deal. I don't know. In fact, it's too early for me because I just started the game to know. But it gives you a timer on that with 2 days. Right. Right. And this is one of those situations where it took me a while I was like, where the hell is the X to open this window? And I looked, and to close this window, I looked.
Yeah.
It took me
they made them really obscure.
Well, the funny thing is, with a lot of these, once I find the X1s, it's pretty, I'm like, oh, there it is. It's obvious. Right?
Right. Once in this case, in Dragon City's case, they always put it in the same spot.
That's nice.
So it's always up in the upper right-hand corner, but it's usually of a color that's not, it doesn't call attention to itself. It's usually a very similar color to the background, just enough contrast so you can see it.
Right.
But not enough contrast to really call attention to itself.
Right. Do you know what a Weaseler is? Just since I used that word earlier.
No.
All right, so a Weaseler is, and I'm thinking of this as maybe a type of Weaseler in design, but a Weaseler is when you can weasel out of something. So,
sure.
Right. So, if I have a sign in my store that says, up to 90% off, right, and you go in there and you actually ended up paying more than normal price, right, and you go and you complain, you said it was 90% off. I say, wait, I never said that. I only said it was up to 90% off. And yes, that up to was very small. And yes, I knew your eyes would be drawn to that big 90% off, which is why I made them big, because I know human psychology. Right. But this allows me to say, I never deceived you. Right.
That's right.
And this is...
I was literally... Like the letter of what I say is different from my intention.
Right. Exactly. Right. My intention is to give you the wrong impression. Right.
Right. And that's a form of trickery and, on its face, unethical.
Yeah. I mean, which is though this is where things get complicated. Right.
Well, but no, I mean, I don't know how complicated that is. It's just because it's legal doesn't mean it's ethical, right? We sort of assume that if things are legal, then that makes them okay.
There's also things like the anchoring bias. Stores say normally
the anchoring bias. You set an expectation for something's value, and then you can use that to make things look more valuable or less valuable.
And that's exactly what they did here, right? They set this expectation of it's $20 and you get it for only $2, right? What a deal, right? So notice, right? And with both this and the Weaseler, there was a button you just didn't look hard enough, or you could have seen it. With both of them, part of me thinks, hey, look, maybe it is up to 90% off and they're just communicating that information to you. Or maybe they're, the up to wasn't that small. How responsible are they for making that up to really, really big enough when you go to like Target and you see a sale.
Right.
Now, notice, obviously, the intent is a part of it, right? Are they trying to trick me or not? Right? Because notice, I might be tricked either way, but are they trying to trick me? And clearly to me, yes. If they're trying to trick me, right, there's something wrong about trying to trick someone. But if I'm tricked, well, I guess I want to say, if I'm tricked, it's more complicated.
Right. If you misunderstand something as opposed to them being misleading. Because we misunderstand things all the time that are perfectly clear. where they seem perfectly clear.
And they can, and though it's partly it's interesting of the buyer beware kind of situation, right? Right. If we look at free to play games as a kind of buyer beware situation, where you're responsible for the choices that you're making, right? They can say, yeah, look, yeah, sure. I put in there something that I thought might end up tricking you. But it's ultimately your responsibility to look out for your own well-being, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't subscribe to this model of,
No, and neither do I. It doesn't feel like it's the best interest of the player, for sure.
Well, definitely not. Though, sometimes it might be in the best interest of the seller. And this is, of course, one of those situations where, it's also a situation where the seller has opportunity to trick the player, but not the other way around.
Right. Where it's asymmetrical.
Right.
Yeah. So let me then. All right. So sort of following along on this topic, which is sort of like how do they set value and how do they do pricing? I'm gonna jump down to food production.
Okay.
So in food production, every time that your farm, you harvest your food for your farm, and then you can replant something, and then they give you some options, and they in fact give you 9 options, and
it's a lot of options.
And so yeah, I mean, typically speaking, I like to give players 5 options because the human brain really can't keep more than 5 things in their head at one time.
Okay.
So 9 options is like well more than that. So each of the farms produces food and XP. So remember, XP is for your personal player level over time. And then you can choose how much time and money you spend each time that you grow more food for each farm. So here you have a scrolling list of choices. And here are I'll read them to you.
Okay.
So the top choice, going from top to bottom, 24 hours and 20 million gold, which is a lot. And at the beginning of the game, you don't even have this.
Okay.
So 24 hours and 20 million gold will get you 150,000 food and 1,250,000 XP.
Wow, those are big numbers.
They're big numbers. So, but hold on to them in your head because you're going to be able. You can only see 2 choices at once on this scrolling list.
Right. Okay.
So,
I've already lost them in my head. Just to be very clear, right? Because they're really big numbers, and it's hard for me to hold big numbers. Especially there's food and XP and gold and time to keep track of.
That's right. So it's really it's time plus gold equals food and experience.
Right.
So the next one down is 12 hours plus 3 million gold equals 25,000 food and 150,000 experience.
Okay, so half the time, a seventh of the gold.
Half the time, basically 1/7, a little bit more than 1/7 of the money will get you 1/6 of the food and about
I think that's 1/7. I think also
1/8 of the experience.
Okay, let me. By the way, please don't kill me by giving me any more numbers to put in my head.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll go down to the very bottom of the list and tell you.
Okay.
If you were going to if you're going to look at the least one and sort of figure out value from that, it's 30 seconds.
Oh, 30 seconds.
50 gold.
Right.
30 seconds, 50 gold, 5 food, and 25 experience. So even let's assume that you don't care about experience. You're going to get experience anyways. It's always going to keep going up.
Right.
So let's just look at it as 30 seconds and 50 gold for 5 food.
And I'm getting the time and the gold. And
you're basically spending the time and the gold.
How do I spend the time?
Food.
What does that mean? Like I'm mining?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're mining. It's going to take this much time before you get the food.
Right. I see.
It'll be 30 seconds before this is harvestable.
Whenever I see something like this, my eyes gloss over. Right?
Absolutely.
is that intentional, or look, here's the thing. Let me just to put my cards on the table a little bit. Like, I never play games like this.
Right.
There are certain free to play mobile games I play, but they're always either kind of either games like Words with Friends, or like Candy Crush or Sudoku or something like that. I never play like Clash of Clans or any kind of games like this where you got to build up something over a long time. So maybe I just don't understand how these sorts of options work. And to me, this seems incredibly confusing, but maybe that's just because I'm not used to this kind of game. Is that how it is, or is it just made to be confusing?
No. I believe that this is designed to be particularly confusing.
Okay.
I believe that in this particular case, they're doing something that is obscuring the values of these of what you're spending.
Okay.
And so what you're meant to do as a player is just say, okay, I have this much gold. I'll spend as much gold as I have to get as much food as I have. Or
okay,
you can say, I want to play at a rate of every 6 hours, where I come back online, or I jump back into the game every 6 hours, and I'm going to choose the one that matches my play style. Okay. Regardless of what it costs and whatever, and that because that's the most efficient use of my farms. Because I need, once my farms are done, they don't produce food until I come back and tell them to produce food again.
So I can use this strategically.
You can, but it's still meant to obscure the values of these things, right?
Right. So
you're meant to make a decision based on time or money that you have, not on the best value you're getting.
Right. It's interesting. One of the things that in this, and I can see because I have it in front of me, the table that you have with all 9 options. But just looking at the one that the first one that you mentioned, right? The difference between the 20 million and the 3 million, where it's just so strange that the time gets cut in half, the money gets cut by 7, the food is 1/6, and the XPs is 1/8. And then if you go down one more, it doesn't cut. The time doesn't cut in half. Now the time gets cut by 1/3, and your next option is 9 hours. It's you would think if they wanted you to have, just to be clear about it, right? If they weren't intentionally trying to make this confusing for you, that they would just give you mathematically consistent options. So, this one is double that one, which is double that one, which is double that one.
Right. Or even say, if you're willing to spend more time and money, then you get a little bonus. Let's say if you're willing to spend more, you get a little bit better results. But that's not what they're doing.
Right.
At all.
They're
just doing this other thing that makes it completely impossible for you to work out. You have to do basically, 4 vector analysis of these numbers to figure out what their average values are.
Right. Though it is interesting, right? So, yeah, let's say I had for one of these, we're going up by a factor of 2 each time, and let's say we have, got 5, 6 options. 9 is so many, right? But let's say I got 6 options. We're going up by 2, and you can still have, let's say, on the side, plus you get bonus, right, as you go up, right? It's interesting because of in some sense it's easier for me, but in another sense, I still need to calculate what's the best deal for me. But at least I can calculate. I don't know. I mean, I can calculate all of them.
At least you have a sense of what you're getting.
I guess I'm not entirely sure.
This is meant to keep you. This is meant to keep you, as far as I can tell. This is meant to keep you completely unmoored
Yeah.
from any sense of value for any of these things.
Can we talk about the other, this idea of, right, moving you away from being able to really understand the value of the things that you have, right? Obviously, there's other ways that's done, right? I mean, the things of value here are, right, the gems and the gold and the food. And mind you, I mean, some of that makes sense. Okay, you need food to feed your dragon, right? You need something that will translate as whatever your real world currency is going to be, which in this case, is it gems, or can you use real currency also to buy things like food directly?
Well, so what you can do is once you've got you're spending gold and not gems to get the food going, but you can spend gems to make it produce instantly, depending on how much time there was. Remember, so you can spend gems to cut the times of things.
Right.
So if you need that food right now, you go ahead, you buy it, and then you spend the gems to make it harvestable instantly.
Okay, so I can buy the food.
And the amount of
gold.
gems that it costs to do that is based on how much time it has left.
Okay, so right, we look at this again. This is, to me, a way to intentionally confuse the player. Right. So
Yes.
that's essentially what you're doing. I mean, why not just have one currency that you can use to buy both? Well, the obvious reason seems to be to make it harder for the player to keep track of what's going on. So they'll just use stuff and then they'll need more. And the obvious way for them to get more if they're invested is to pay money for it.
Right. Right. It's a mess. It feels to me like this feels to me of all the things that I'm going to call out, this one particular feels like the most ethically dubious element of the game.
Though if we expand it to free-to-play games in general, my God, it's just so common to...
It's so common.
Right, to, mind you, okay, the first step, right, is to, and we've talked about it before, right? I mean, this idea of trading in the real money for real currency for game currency, on the one hand, is really used to make you forget how much the real money is, but on the other hand, it also has these practical uses. Right. Depending on, the value of real world currency changes depending on where you are compared to this. This gives you an international currency, right?
Right. Some people have complained that, the idea of a premium currency or a hard currency versus a soft, and any game that has a premium currency and a soft currency is already suspect. I don't necessarily agree with that because I do think that there are useful values or useful things to do with that in the game.
So what do you have in mind here? What's our premium currency?
So the premium currency is the gems. And then the soft currencies are food and gold. It's pretty easy to get gold. It's pretty easy to get food.
You don't buy gold?
I think you probably can, and I think you probably can also buy food. I'm not entirely sure, but the way that the game is meant to be played, I believe, is to go, I need a bunch of food to level up my dragons. Let me get. This is going to take 12 hours. Well, I want to do this now.
Right.
So I'll just spend the 20 gems. Oh, I don't have enough gems. Well, let me go buy some gems.
Let me ask you. There's something very interesting, right, about this idea. And this was a pretty early idea, I think, in free-to-play, of using time as the thing of value that you would pay for, right? So in some sense, you're not affecting gameplay unless you're in competition of some kind, right?
Right.
Which I'm not sure if you are in this game or not, right? But, in which case you're not, right? And if you were in a competition of kind, this would be a pay-to-win of some sort, right? So essentially, the game is telling you the option, right? If you want to wait, you can wait. If you want to pay, you can pay. You have agency. It's up to you, right? I mean, and that seems like a pretty good way to go. I'm thinking about a 9-year-old and the great patience that a 9-year-old has, but maybe a 9-year-old would learn to accept that that's just the way things are. You have a limited amount of money, and this is what you're going to spend it on. But my concern earlier was that there were two different kinds of currency.
Mm-hmm.
And because if you're buying gold just to clarify, right? If there's two kinds of currencies, if one thing is for time and another thing is to buy food, I'm complaining that, look, you should be able to use the same thing for both. Having two things makes it intentionally more confusing. But if the only thing you really spend money on is time, then that problem doesn't appear in this game.
The way to think about it is like poker chips.
Okay.
Like if you go to a casino, and again, children are not allowed to do this for really good reasons, right? If you go to a casino, in order to play if you want to go to the craps table, you can give them money at the craps table, and they will exchange your money for
chips.
You can give them cash, and they'll give you an equal number of chips.
Right.
But if you win, they're only going to give you chips, and then there's a way to go and trade. You have to go somewhere special. You have to go to the cash gauge and trade your chips for cash.
Right.
And because they know that if you just have chips, it's not money to you anymore.
Right, or it's money that you've already kind of invested. Right. It's a different sort.
Right. You've either. Right. But your winnings. But if they're talking about winnings, that's
right.
You've just given them $20. You spun the wheel, and now you've got $120 worth of chips. Right.
Which are
and
nothing.
You have to go somewhere special to change that back into cash.
Right. And but again, that has so much utility, right? Because I could take those chips and I can go to the blackjack table and use those same chips, and we can say
you could have done that with cash.
Potentially. God, it's just so much harder with cash. The chips are so much. Again, right? There are some things here that I think, potentially you could, but the utility, right, for enjoyment of the chips really helps. And and again, maybe the same thing could be with virtual currencies. In many contexts, though not all contexts. And I'm sure that there's some game context where, they move you to a virtual currency just to get kind of that effect of it's not real money. But again, what I'm strenuously objecting to is more than one of these currencies. Because at this point, it's hard for me to see how this is useful rather than just confusing. Or rather than intentionally confusing. You
can go to the shop and buy food, but you're spending gems to do it.
Okay.
And you can also buy gold. Yes, but you're spending gems to do it.
Okay, great. So they don't actually have.
And then of course you can buy gems.
Right. So gems is really your only currency. Good.
Well, it's the hard currency, right?
Right.
Because there's other things that cost.
Like
if you're buying a building, it costs gold. If you're buying crops to put in your fields, it costs gold.
Right. Sorry, I take it back. Yeah. So at the end of the day, everything gets purchased. The conversion happens to gems. Essentially, because you can't use gems for everything.
Right.
All right. You still do a secondary conversion, which makes it harder for you to understand. You've got this double conversion. How much was this worth in the first place? Okay. We definitely think that's a trickery that is unless you've got a really good reason, and I don't see a good reason, a good useful reason for it. Right here, it just seems really wrong.
I really can't imagine. Yeah.
Okay. What about the treasure chests?
Yes, let's talk about the treasure chests. So the treasure chests are interesting. This game uses basically loot boxes. They call them treasure chests. And there's a bunch of different ones. So depending on which one you find, you're going to get different stuff out of it. They have different kinds of rewards. So there's other things that I haven't really talked about in the game details. But you could possibly get dragons. You could get dragon eggs. You can get money. You can get gold. You could get food. You could get these tokens that you can then use to help upgrade buildings in the zoo part of it. So there's a bunch of things you could get.
Okay.
When you encounter a chest, you can tap on it to find out what things are inside, and if you're mathy, you can sort of work out the odds.
So when you say
this
tap on it to find out what kinds of things inside, you mean?
Yeah, they'll actually show you. They'll show you a list of here's what you could win.
Okay.
And so in this example, there are 720 there's 720 slots in this treasure chest. So, and they filled this treasure chest with tokens. 460 of them are rainbow tokens. And then there's a bunch of other types of tokens that are each 20. So your chances of getting a rainbow token is 460 out of 720.
Okay.
Your chances of getting any of the other types of tokens are all 20 out of 720. So much smaller.
Right.
Yeah, a tiny percentage compared to the other.
Okay.
And so that by itself would be fine. Like if they just showed me that. But what they've done is they've taken those rainbow tokens and they've split them up into 4 different entries on the list in different places on the list. Right.
So they'll be like, here's the, let's say you have 5 tiers. You might get the second tier first, and then the fourth, and then the third, and then the fifth, and
right. So if you're just looking at this. If you're looking at this, the top one is like rainbow tokens 200 times. So that's you have a 200 times chance of getting the rainbow tokens, a 20 times chance of getting the other ones. But then if you scroll down the list, you'll find more rainbow tokens. There's another 120 down at the bottom of that. And then at the very bottom of the list, there's 2 spots where you can see them for 60 and 80.
I'm so confused
so
already.
Again, this can only be designed to obscure what your actual odds of getting the thing that you want.
The fact that they specifically confuse you about them, right?
Yes.
To get the odds, and it's interesting because, mind you, why are they going out of 740, right? Well, 740 is such a weird. Why aren't they going out of 1,000? I'm assuming because it's easier for you to do the calculations for 1,000 or 100.
That's right. What's your chances of 1 in 740? What is the percentage chance of
right.
that? Right. I mean, that's going to be
1 out of 7.
A harder number to figure
740,
out.
Right. I could do the.
Right. What's your chances of hitting 20 out of 740?
Right. 20 times that. Yes.
Right. Let me go get a calculator.
Right. Yeah, that's really interesting. I wonder where they just again. Is there any reason whatsoever that you could have for why it would be out of 740, right? And it's hard for me to see why, right? Otherwise, again, it just seems, as you're saying, like they're just trying to confuse you.
It's just a number that's meant to be hard to work out.
Right. And
it can be any number. It's a computer, right? Because it could be literally anything.
Right. So. Andy, well, so these are loot boxes. Are these ones that you buy, or are these ones that you just get?
You can buy them, right? Every time you log in, they give you an option to buy some, but you also find them along the way.
Right. So finding them along the way, I'm like, okay, well, it's my reward. My reward could be random. Often they don't tell me what the chances are going to be, but here they're telling me what the chances. It's just a reward. If you're selling me a product, on the other hand, and you're intentionally trying to trick me into not understanding, the value of what I'm getting, that seems to be, quite wrong.
Right.
Wow, Andy, I want to say that when we started this, I didn't expect for there to be so many issues with a middle of the road free to play game. And we've talked about, using, the anchoring bias, we've talked about a whole lot of manipulative and deceptive. Deception is part of manipulation here.
Yeah,
but
obfuscating at least, right? Yeah, just deceptive in the sense that they're obscuring what the important information.
Right, or they're trying to essentially, they're trying to trick you into thinking things are other than what they really are. right? In one way or another, right? Right, this entire question here about the pop-ups themselves that they're using and the tactics that might come into play with that, the tracking possibility, how you're going to deal with the questions of kids, and with the issue of annoyance, I guess, right, is another one of those things that we talked about. And,
annoying players to get money out of them.
At the end of the day, though, part of me wants to ask, is this just how free-to-play games have to be?
The simple answer of that is no.
Clearly, right? Because, we both played games where that's not the case, where they're free-to-play games, right?
Right.
So we know that's not the case. But what about games that are complicated and take a lot of resources? So, yeah, part of me kind of wonders if, look, millions of people love these games, right? So is this just what it takes to kind of maintain these games with the maintenance cost that just kind of takes to do them and to ensure that the game continues so people keep having fun with it?
No, it's a reason. I think it's a very good question. Other games manage it. Do all games need to do... I mean, there's a lot of these practices that on their face are not necessarily terrible. Like I don't mind the extra set of, I don't mind having a hard currency and a soft currency.
Okay.
That doesn't bother me on its face.
Right.
It just can be used for a lot of really bad things. Or I should say, it can be used in a lot of obscuring ways.
Right.
Ways to obscure the value of things.
And we've got here kind of the way it's used and the intention it's used. And, we've got this huge variety of players, right, with different, cognitive capacities, et cetera, that are coming into it. The free-to-play market to me is just very, very interesting because I find it to be such a unique product. I think compared to every other free thing out there, we just don't. I don't think the world has ever seen anything like that. And it seems that the market, in so many ways, just we want things for free, and at the same time, we don't want to be manipulated.
Right.
But we also don't want those pop-up ads, but we also want it for free. Right. So,
right.
It's weird. Like, partly I want to say that maybe some of the responsibility here falls on the expectations of players that maybe are demanding the impossible. But on the other hand, that's really like an unfair grouping,
Yeah, and ultimately it's up to the people who make games to set those expectations.
Right, because we'll play whatever you guys make, right?
Right. And I mean, it's up to people like me, the game designers, to set your expectations about what to experience in my games. And if the experience is, if the expectation is all games need to be cheap or free, then, maybe this is not, it's like I could probably make more money picking up trash on the side of the road.
Maybe, unless, right, you make your game again, right? You give me the good options in my free-to-play game that I'm happy to play with and I'm happy to buy, all the cosmetic outfits I could have, right? All of those things that make free-to-play thrive and, so popular these days.
That's right.
All right, Andy. Good podcast. GP.
Thank you. Good podcast, man.
Play nice, everybody.